Hello, welcome to the continuation of my read-through of my book, The Baha'i Faith, A Short History, this one dealing with Chapter 6, The Writings and Teachings of Baha'u'llah. As in previous chapters, I've divided the material into two parts for ease of recording. The chapter itself is one of four on the establishment of the Baha'i Faith in the period up to 1921. So we've already discussed the life of Baha'u'llah. Now we talk about his writings and teachings, and then that will be followed by chapters on Abdul-Baha and the Baha'i communities up to 1921. The chapter is divided into a number of subsections: Baha'u'llah's awareness of the divine presence, ethics and the spiritual path, the divine summons, theology and metaphysics, the addresses to the rulers, government and world order, and holy law. Obviously, these are very short summaries of complex subjects, and so if you want more details, do by all means go and look at my Introduction to the Baha'i Faith from Cambridge, or the Oneworld Concise Encyclopedia. Now to the book. So, like the Bab, Baha'u'llah wrote profusely, particularly during his time in Edirne, Akka, and Bahji. With the acceptance of his claim to be a manifestation of God, all his writings assumed the status of divine revelation, including the earlier work composed prior to his declaration of mission, mostly those written in Baghdad, but also a few that have survived from his time in Tehran and Kurdistan. All told, there are at least 15,000 tablets by him, mostly letters, but also including a number of substantial works. Baha'u'llah's early writings have already been mentioned. The themes of this period were continued in his later work, specifically his awareness of the divine presence, ethics and the spiritual path, the divine summons, and the nature of God's relationship with humankind and creation. Later writings include his addresses to the world rulers and subjects such as the proper form of government and international order, and the establishment of Baha'i law. In contrast to Babism, there is relatively little concern for esotericism. Baha'u'llah's awareness of the divine presence. Throughout his ministry, Baha'u'llah emphasized the magnitude of his sense of the divine presence. Although he gave this theological form in the doctrine that the manifestation of God expresses the attributes of God to humanity, God in essence being utterly transcendent and removed from the possibility of human contact, the force of much of Baha'u'llah's writings here defies easy description, giving as it does an impression of both the ineffability and immediacy of the relationship he felt with the Godhead. Several of his writings take the form of a dialogue between the voices of God and Baha'u'llah, such as the Fire Tablet, in which Baha'u'llah bewails his suffering in the path of God, and God comforts him. Another recurrent form is the description of a vision of a heavenly messenger, or the personification of a divine attribute, such as trustworthiness in all her beauty, standing on a pillar of light. At times, speaking directly with the voice of God, Baha'u'llah elsewhere compares himself to a leaf stirred by the winds of God's will and transformed by him, wishing to be silent, but aroused by the Holy Spirit and bidden to speak. Ethics and the spiritual path. From the Baghdad period onwards, Baha'u'llah emphasized the spiritual and ethical requirements of the true seeker after God. Although at times employing the phraseology of Sufism and referring to mystical states of soul that transcend everyday experience, he is far more concerned with outlining the ethical and religious requirements of daily life. Central here are such traditional Islamic concerns as the need for detachment from the world, devotional prayer, and the fear of and trust in God, but there is also a distinctive stress on practical activity. Particular qualities emphasized include the need for complete trustworthiness and honesty in all social dealings, wisdom, righteousness, charity, kindness to all, including animals, forgiveness, steadfastness, patience, humility, and the avoidance of backbiting. The Divine Summons. This is the Day of God, in which the whole human race is called upon to recognize God's messenger. In the Quran, written in Baghdad, the messenger was still the Bab, but after his own declaration of mission, it was Baha'u'llah. Baha'u'llah is the promised one of the religions of the past, and in various of his writings he addresses the Zoroastrians, the Jews, and particularly the Christians, in addition to the followers of Islam. The religious leaders are specifically summoned, historically they having been responsible for the persecution and opposition to each of the previous manifestations of God. The Islamic and Babi teaching of holy war is abolished. The Baha'is are to teach the faith through their words and deeds. If necessary, they are to welcome martyrdom, but living to establish their cause in the world is the goal. Those who persecute the faithful are condemned, and Baha'u'llah states that they will be chastised by God. The Shi'i ulama of Iran are particularly warned of their eventual abasement if they persist in their opposition. Theology and metaphysics. Baha'u'llah's theology revolves around the manifestations of God. God is in essence unknowable and can only be approached through his attributes, and these are most perfectly expressed in the persons of the manifestations of God. The manifestations combine divine and human qualities. Each one brings a renewal of God's grace and gives his followers the teachings appropriate for that particular age, and on that basis a new divine civilization develops. In addition to the prophets listed in the Quran, notably Adam, Abraham, Moses, Jesus, and Muhammad, Baha'u'llah recognizes Zoroaster as a manifestation, and Abdul-Baha was later to recognize Krishna and the Buddha. The purpose of human life is to recognize God through the current manifestation, and to love him and obey his laws. Such action leads the believer to heaven, in both this life and the afterlife, while opposition leads to hell. Heaven and hell are thus regarded as spiritual states. There is no bodily resurrection, and creation is eternal. The addresses to the rulers. Baha'u'llah's proclamation to the rulers consisted of a number of letters sent to specific individuals: Sultan Abdulaziz, Nasruddin Shah, Napoleon III, Queen Victoria, Tsar Alexander II, and Pope Pius IX, as well as to ministers in the Ottoman government. Notional addresses to particular kings and to political and religious leaders in general can be found in various of his writings, such as the Surah Muluk, the Chapter of the Kings, composed in 1868, and the Kitab al-Aqdas, the Most Holy Book, completed around about 1873. Three main elements may be identified in these writings: the announcement of Baha'u'llah's claims, reproof or praise addressed to particular rulers, and comments on the nature of government and international order. The first two represent an extension of his proclamation of the divine summons, and the third will be dealt with separately below. Baha'u'llah declares himself to be the King of Kings. The kings are his vassals, but he has not come to seize their kingdoms. They are bidden to turn towards God and investigate his cause. It is nearness to God, not sovereignty, that is the source of glory. In his letters to the Western monarchs, he also states that he is the fulfillment of Christian prophecy and the return of Christ. I'll talk about his letters to the individual rulers in part 2 of this chapter. Thank you. So, thank you for listening, and particular thanks to my patrons, Ian Palin and Tricia Williams. If you like these videos, you're very welcome to subscribe to my channel. I will try to answer any questions you may have about them in a future video. By the way, if you want to support the development of the channel, you can do so through Patreon or PayPal. I'll give details of my accounts below the video. You can also click the like button so that I can get an idea of which videos are of greatest interest to viewers. Have a good day.